Well, good morning, everybody. Somebody else is going to join us in a while, I suppose, representing IFTH. She will be a little late. Now, I don't know whether you have listened to the former roundtable session, remarkably represented by our friends, Grégory Pesset. The theme that we're going to deal with during 1 hour and that we are going to tackle immediately, that is sportswear, athleisure, new horizons, new Eldorado for the garment brands. Well, to talk about that, well, I'm not going to introduce each and every one of you. We are too many of us here. But we are going to start with the connection with the former roundtable session, the new production modes of consumption and production. Grégory, since you were here before, just tell us what is your company, what you do, what kind of technologies, adapt and develop for high-level sportsmen. Well, Jonathan and Flesher, that is our company. We've got two activities, service given to athletes. We develop garments for them to improve their performance for extreme sports, whether on the air, on the snow, or in the water. We adapt to all kinds of extreme sports. The second core activity is the development activity. We support the brands in the development of their collections from A to Z with creators, designers, modelists, prototypists, and we serve them with all our technologies since we have our workshop next to their design offices. Now, how can you define you? Are you a fashion brand or a brand which is a symbol for the fashion industry? No, we are not properly said a fashion brand. But, in the luxury fashion brands, they all are tackling the sports sector at the moment, creating more sporting garments with waterproof zips and so on and so forth. And the outdoor brands are stretching their activities on the urban fashion. So I think we are at the crossroads of those two universes. And one is inspiring to the other and vice versa. Well, Florent. Good morning everywhere. I'm Florent, the chair of the Arasa company. Happy president, happy CEO of this company. We are working in an incredible universe with fantastic outlets in France and abroad. We manufacture gloves for sports activities and body protections. So, skiing or motorbiking or horse riding gloves and protections for the knees and the elbows for the extreme sports. And back to your question, well, we are we are approached by luxury brands. Maybe I'm not allowed to quote them. Yes, you are. Well, we have produced gloves for them that they have added to their collections. I think that figures are rather good. And with the sneakers, sneakers had developed a whole range resembling a Nike or an Adidas, and they have figures that are very interesting too. So those markets are considered by those big retail brands. They have developed other products at prices that are accessible. So they ask you to develop a technology or a specific product that will be identified with their brand, or do they find the range of product they need and they just add their logo? No, we have our own internal designers, so we make proposals to them. We don't take on-shelf products. We take the Balenciaga codes, for example, There is a new stylist there, and we have added their touch on our products. But there are other instances in which we tell them, well, be careful, this is going to be dangerous. I mean, it can be torn and so on and so forth, and they respect our specifications. Well, back to your neighbor. Well, I read an interview from you in NT, if I remember well, and what you were saying was that you are very much involved in today's topic. Could you explain what Districo is? Yes, yes. To the difference of the other participants, we are not completely invested in the or involved in the sports sector, because we produce yarns, specific yarns that we call thermo-fusible or low melt or Fusigoyan yarns. The specificity of those yarns and thread is that they make it possible to develop products, not only sportwear, but it makes it possible for sport brands to, in the knit sector, to develop products that they couldn't develop without our threads. It's difficult for me to quote brands here because, well, we are restricted. But to make it simple, it makes it possible to make a knitted or a knit fabric to be much stiffer. It reinforces the fabric structure. Well, next to us there is another show which is dedicated to materials, furs, synthetic and alternate products for materials. Well, so you give an answer to the lack of natural materials, if I may say so. Well, we are not in competition with the other types of material. We can associate our threads to natural materials. They are there to reinforce them in particular. Well, OT Symbiosis is represented by your company. Well, we didn't see your trainee, by the way. She was supposed to be here. Well, I'm Angélique Technocar, ET Symbiose. I'm going to start with the name EP Symbiose, or Symbiosis. It represents electronics and textiles, and the symbiosis between both. The interest of this consulting organization is to reconcile two universes that are difficult to reconcile at the moment. Today, you know, I've got nothing against my colleague who is an electronician or an electronic engineer. An electronic engineer is somebody coming from the textile sector, have a lot of difficulties in communicating and talking together. So the idea of sitting together and meet existing requirements of the markets in terms of communication and response to the customers' expectations. Our consulting organization, wants to serve specific customers that have specific requests in the classical garment industry or in the luxury industry. Whenever they need something electronic, in particular in the medical sector, some people have to be kept to watch on 24 hours around the day, around the clock, so we can give a response to that. So we work for those sectors and the family. Everything luminous too is falls under our field of activity. When people want to be seen, I mean, we can make their garment luminous. Well, I'm a modelist myself. I'm a stylist. And in terms of communication, well, I've got difficulties with my colleague, but it's very interesting because, we push together way up to the extreme. I'm a stylist and I've got some extension of my capacity in the virtual products, and this makes it possible for the final customer to, materialize what we all have in mind, but which is not really easy to visualize. Well, thank you. That was very clear, well argued, and we're going to put questions to you. Jean-Baptiste, you remember, thanks to you, we had organized a round table some time ago, and I remember that somebody made a remark that the lady has just raised. That is the lack of communication between the world of electronics and the world of textile. You know, there are still some difficulties to integrate electronics into the textile sector. Yes, actually, you know, I'm a general purpose engineer, but I had the opportunity of working during 2 years with Angélique. It's thanks to her that I'm sitting here today. I learned a lot with Angélique because I don't come from the garment industry. La Fabrique is a know-how school around leather goods, clothing, furnishing, and merchandising. And it becomes more and more important for us to develop. Historically, our know-how was focusing on the top-end garments and clothing, but for economic reasons and technological reasons, we find that limiting our teaching to those traditional techniques does not make it possible for us to find outlets and jobs for our students. And that's why we take a maximum contact with a lot of people. And at La Fabrique, we organize a kind of innovation network to bring new solutions, to get inspired from the sporting world, for example, and get familiar with those new techniques for us. And we also try and find transverse solutions with other schools of engineers, electronic engineers, for example, to make the sportswear industry progress. So you need capturing data concerning the physical activity, concerning the environment. There are 3 sectors for us: the individual protection equipment, the sport, and the medical sector. So what may be risky is rather the environment rather than what happens inside the body of the person. So it's important to instrument a garment with carbon sensors or other types of environmental sensors. So electronics is a factor of development, and we've got a lot of potential. Something that was raised before, that is the problem of recycling. When you've got onboard electronics, if I may say so, there is a difficulty later on to recycle, to reprocess the material and remove components that can't be recycled in the same way. Abdillah Soussou, you are a sportswear producer, if I may say so. You've got a magnificent collection. Yes, we work on 2 segments, equipment and consumers at large, with a new collection. When I'm talking about equipment, well, that is a tailored equipment for sport institutions such as INSEP, for example, or groups such as the Paris Transportation Board. This Paris Transportation Board has a big sport club, you know, and we produce those garments for them. We don't produce systematically in France. The customer asks us to produce somewhere because of price and cost problems. And in addition to this, for 2 years, we have launched a first collection that we called Tricolor, and that will be something that will be sold to the consumers at large. Urban Circus. Good morning. What I'm going to tell you about the Urban Circus history or story. Yes, very quickly, I'm going to come back to points that have already been raised. We produce clothing for the eco-riders. That is those people that travel on bicycles or, other types of mobile instruments. Where when riding a bicycle, well, you sweat. You can't be clothed with a costume and so on and so forth, or a jacket and so on. So we try and reconcile both necessities. I mean, it's extremely interesting because actually today the employers or the companies offer to their workers an advantage or some subsidies if they use their bicycle, for example, or mobility facilities that are close to sporting. I mean, either walking or riding bicycles and so on and so forth. So when if you ride a bicycle, what do you do when getting to your office? You have a shower or what? How can we combine materials and different requirements? I mean, being involved in sport and meeting customers during the whole day, you can't wear a wet shirt, for example. Well, it depends on which travel mean you use, whether it's a bicycle or an electric bicycle. So we create garments that are adapted to those modes of transportation. We'll have for cycling, for example, we'll have membranes that can let the air go through and so on and so forth. Moving in an urban environment that is a very hostile environment. Of course, there are more and more scooters, I mean, on the cycling path and so on and so forth. Each and every day we hear about accidents. There are laws that are promulgated to limit the speed of those electrical engines, mobile facilities. So we reinvent something which is very fashionable, that is the yellow vest. The yellow vest has been existing for a very long time, but nobody thought about redesigning it. Well, Karl Lagerfeld said, well, it's very ugly, but it can save your life. So we have decided to relook Karl Lagerfeld and make sure that those yellow vests that used to be ugly could be very nice. Well, is your collection ready? Yes, the third one is ready. And we started with very nice things, developing a completely new fabric, which is fluorescent and reflective, which gives which gives visibility. We also adorn them with, some patterns. I mean, for example, a banana or whatever. And when at night, when the headlights of a car hit this yellow vest, well, there is a fluorescent banana which appears and so on and so forth. Well, you are producing gloves for motorbikers. Yes, we started on the integration of electronics into our gloves. We started with the heating glove. The first heating glove was launched in 1984. We had many collections later on. And we have, this year we must produce approximately, we have sold 20,000 heating gloves. But we have gone even further with a connected application. And we try and work on jackets with light sensors that will make it possible to recover the light during the day to reflect it at night. So this is rather interesting. We start from the sporting sector to move to the professional world. You know, there are workers that work at night, and we must protect them also. Yes, there are more and more people working at night. The professions are not necessarily dangerous, but most of them may be exposed more at night than during the day. Yes, of course, those people that work on the roads, I mean the firemen, for example, the police forces, well, they must be seen. They must be seen clearly, and they must have a real equipment for that. Well, and it must be a nice product, aesthetic product. You know, we always fear that the workers won't wear the gloves or the hard cap on a work site because it's not nice. Yes, we try and make them fashionable. Well, of course, there is a growing demand at the moment on the professional garment sector. You know, the French market is growing by 40% a year, which is huge. You know, the garment itself is nice, but the brand makes the difference. Because, you know, it has a nice look. I mean, somebody working on a work site feels like having a nice look too. The worker is a consumer too. You know, well, you know, of course, the worker works on the work site, but he must travel, he must make cost estimates and so on with the customers, and he needs to be dressed in a nice way. And we shouldn't forget this aspect too. It's back to what Florent said. The acceptability is essential. You know, Eli Hansen, you know, the brand Eli Hansen makes the difference, as a matter of fact, whether it's nice or not. You know, there is a co-design process. Our teams work together, and when they understand the requirement, when they understand the need, well, we can't impose anything to them. But if they design something and they want to have a sensor that may help you in their way to work or improve their productivity, well, the customer will accept that. And this is a way for them to wear the suitable garment. Well, in hospitals, for example, they wear Crocs shoes. It's ugly, but it's very comfortable. And there is a fashion phenomenon which applies. Well, you receive a lot of professionals in your school. Do they deal with those topics with your professors and students? Well, we have found that actually the design problem, even for very functional equipment or garments, is a central point. Last year we worked with the DGA, the General Armament Delegation, and we met our students from different horizons, garment designer, marketing engineer, and designer. And by visiting the DGA organization, we found that their design office, which will prototype all military uniforms, have modelists but no stylists. And we interrogated soldiers during this visit. And, well, underwear, for example, they said that even if it is hyper important, well, it's not supplied by the Ministry of Defense, or even if it is supplied, well, we don't wear them. They buy them from Uniqlo or else. You know, there are knit fabric or products that are assembled with warp and weft, and this is because they've got a know-how for that. So our problem, interesting problem, is to make sure that even in a very constraining environment, we must not forget the creative part of the job, because it is what makes it possible for the product to be very easily adopted. And this underlies a lot of things. What is interesting in the sports sector is that it brings new creativeness elements or references. This is very interesting. Sport in terms of performance, but sport also needs some kind of comfort notion. We'll never forget this comfort habit that we have had.
Par exemple, je reprends.
You're absolutely right. For example, we recently supplied a regional rehabilitation center, and we used Sportswear. And we said to our suppliers that it was very interesting for their brand to be represented in that center. Also, we've supplied lots of outfits for seminars and many events, and we said to the brands that it was actually very good to be recognizable. And clearly this is what sportswear companies are going for today. Thank you very much. Angélique. We've probably noticed that today I wear a dress and sneakers, but it's not because I'm taking part in this panel discussion. It's just that it's very, very difficult to run after your bus with stilettos. Anyway, so today we draw a lot of inspiration from the comfort that you can see in different garments, for example. So we work with stylists and designers. And well, today you really have to include comfort. It's absolutely essential. People need to feel comfortable. Right. And so I'm a designer, and what I try to do is to adapt a style to the technical aspect. And I've also worked for the sports community, and the real question you need to ask yourself is, what is the customer expectation? What does the customer want? For example, it's not the same for a climber or for a footballer. If you do mountaineering, you always have your head up, you always look up. So it changes everything. And so when you design your product, some materials would be very important for the comfort of the customer, and there's also the issue of style. Today, people want to have good-looking materials, but they also want something comfortable. So they want it all, right? So they want everything. They want something comfortable, that is crease-resistant, that is cheap. And it's a global trend. Absolutely, it is. So today, people want to have nice garments that are comfortable. For example, my son loves a mountain bike. I'm always scared, but anyway, he's well protected, and well, he's 16, right? And he tells me that everything is ugly, and he tells me I'm not going to put this protective equipment on because it doesn't look good. I won't put them on because if it does not have a nice design with nice colors. So you can see here the issue of design. For a very long time, design was the poor relationship, the icing on the cake, but today design is absolutely part and parcel of the protection of people. And it also conveys the identity of the brand and the image that a brand wants to convey to people. You always convey something with the clothes you wear. Right, well, we discussed this with our friends from the Cité du Design earlier on at the previous panel discussion, and even in healthcare. Design is also very important. And there are businesses today that seem to be quite successful business-wise. So marketing, design, research and materials, so all of this is very important. So right from the start, all teams are involved. And I remember what the representative of industrial companies said: if all teams team up right from the start, it means 80% success. But if people work in silos, but I'm sure it's something you see in your company, only 20% success. I know that's a bit exaggerated, but yes. I wanted to come back to this concept of comfort and functionality. And this term is something that I don't think aisance, the French term, is something, this ease, this comfort is something that we don't use enough. Anyway, well, I was really struck by something that occurred to us a few years ago. Parisian firefighters came to us to have brand new outfits, so we completely took apart their outfits, which really didn't have a nice cut. It was so, for example, if they raised their arms, it would not really look good, and it was very heavy. So one of the first things we did is that we used a ski jacket that we had designed for different brands with 3D design, and we used materials from the sports industry, and it changed everything. So it was the same in terms of design, because they have to wear reflectors and so on. But we used all the technical aspects, all the technical skills we had. So from this ski jacket, and firefighters were really enthusiastic about it. It's changed everything. Right. And so combining different industries, different styles is very important. For too long, people thought that there was fashion, then there was sports, and that they were all separated. But actually, everybody thought the same. But actually, working in a much more open way, for example, working with people from the car industry or the aerospace industry, is very interesting. Of course, we don't have the same methods, but it's a great source of new ideas, and it really allows you to work differently on your products. Well, you're the fitting the perfect demonstration of this. People who come from this panel discussion come from different industries, different walks of life. So we have people from sports, from research, from education, and also it was the same in previous panel discussions. People from different walks of life and industries. They work in art, for example, but artists today, for example, are also interested in recycling. Now, speaking of recycling, you've just joined us. So Dr. Yazim Oguzguya. Thank you very much. You come from Lille in the north of France. So, what can you tell us about your research? Because we had a chat over the phone, and you told us that you were working on something really specific. So I'm a PhD student. I mean, I did a PhD, and I worked on specific textiles to tackle skin cancer. And today at the IFTH, where I work, I try to provide my expert knowledge to companies. I provide support to these companies in their R&D projects. And at the IFTH, we have a real advantage. We have expert knowledge in all textile-related processes, and also for from all the way to the raw materials to the finished products. But we also have prototyping tools. And so we try to find solutions, smart solutions that can be applied at any stage to textiles. What is a smart solution for a layman like me? Can you... It doesn't really speak to me. It doesn't mean anything. Right, answer. Right, so textiles are not supposed to have interactive properties, but smart textiles do have such interactive properties. It's not necessarily something electronic, but textiles respond in their own way to external stimuli. For example, it may change colors. It can tell you that temperatures are changing. Right, and we saw something similar in gloves. There's a glove maker, a French glove maker, which is a leader in its industry, and it does the same, I think. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, so there are different solutions that can be applied. We can also make textile sensors for monitoring, but not necessarily for healthcare. It can be also for the construction industry, the car industry, right, and also for safety. Absolutely. So this is really a cross-industry topic. And anyway, it's the trend today, especially with the 4.0. So if textile businesses want to remain competitive, they have to innovate, and they have to work with other industries. They have to work with electronicians, also maybe with specialists from the car industry. You need to find solution where there are needs. So actually the IFTH, your institution, is really at the crossroads of different areas of research. Do you have the feeling that every innovation, any technological innovation in sportswear or in the car industry can inform the rest of or other industries? You've talked about light or luminescent fabrics, but does it apply specifically to the health industry, for example, or other industries or advanced industries? Well, for smart textiles, it's very important. There really has to be a real need. For example, if you make a luminescent fabric, but if you use it for some specific industry, there's a real need. And so the added value of a product is much more important here. And so if you make textiles that can help, for example, people with disabilities, if textiles can orient them, help them, guide them, it's a lot of added value instead of just being a widget. Okay, so we're not really talking about gadgets here. We're talking about high effective products. But you're quite right to underscore the added value of an additional asset or property. Well, do you all use luminescent or reflective fabrics? Do you? Right, where do you find them? Where do you find your suppliers? Do you make them yourselves or do you buy them? Make or buy? Do you design them? We've used a French technology. We've used optical fiber, so it's integrated in our textile. We used it for a very specific project. Then the problem is the price. The price tag of the product, the end product in stores for the consumer market. And even for high-tech products like yours, the price tag is an issue? Well, it really depends on the application. For example, for the medical sector, price is not an issue. If it's more for medical applications. Now, if it's for the consumer market, the price tag is quite important. So for us, price is important. You really have to factor this in when you design your product. Is it the same with Districo? Well, you make yarn, but well, we had to deal with a large US equipment maker which asked us to make our thermo adhesive yarn visible at night. It was very difficult, but we did our best, but we couldn't find a solution. Maybe the IFTH can help you. Actually, we liaise a lot with the institution, with the IFTH. I just wanted to pick up on what you said. Yes, sure. You were saying that some innovations in a specific area can spread into other areas. For example, here, so I've just referred to this US sports apparel, a leading company which developed this concept and which really revolutionized shoemaking processes by knitting a specific part of the shoe in just one piece so the upper part, so just one piece to avoid waste. And we realized that this technology was further developed in 2 or 3 years, over 2 or 3 years, by luggage makers. So they've used this to knit really hard fabrics. It's been used also by luxury handbag makers. So I think very soon we should see luxury brands developing such knitted handbags besides their leather and fabric handbags. All right, so is it a thermo tightening, a thermal hardening process? Yes. So this yarn melts at a very low temperature, much lower than standard polyamide polyester, and as from 60 degrees Celsius, so it's a very low temperature. This yarn melts and gives, especially knitted items, it gives them really a specific form. All right. Françoise Ambeau, designer, told us that she worked with a French design company to develop furniture based on linen, and they used a yarn. It's quite similar to what you do. It would harden. Well, it's for small volumes, but it would harden, and you could make furniture on demand. For example, a stool. Jean-Baptiste. Yes, I just wanted to pick up on this issue of luminescent fabrics and the issue of costs, because we've worked with a partner, and so we've used with specific brushed techniques. So it's a jacquard weaving of optical fibers, and I think they've developed it for the healthcare industry. It was developed for toddlers' jaundice. Yes, and they've also used micro seaweeds for catalysts. Anyway, what we can say here is that innovation always happens in cascades. Now, we're talking about sports today, but here we're clearly at the crossroads between textiles and new technologies. And we can see that these technologies are sufficiently mature to launch into an industrial process, but it's not mature enough for low-cost industrial processes, but it's just around the corner. And that's why Angelique and other panelists here have specialized in specific cutting-edge industries. Yes, it seems to be really, really specific industries. Yes, because buyers, businesses need to have sufficient funds. And sometimes they have to wait 3, 4, 5 years. Now, if you look at polymers, for example, you need to ask the right questions. And clearly, it's going to be very difficult for the fashion industry to enter in this area, because the fashion cycle is still too fast, too short. But if businesses manage to reduce their costs and streamline the luminescent fabric process, maybe this is something that you can find in gloves and garments going forward at reasonable prices. All prices that you may not find on the consumer market. But anyway, my point is that innovation is all about cascades. You need to identify real needs and buyers that have the project management tools that can help you follow through such initiatives. Right, so these projects require 3 to 5 years to completely develop. And the problem with the fashion industry is that it's really fast. Cycles are really short. But a real industrial project, I mean, from the original idea all the way to the marketing of the product, people usually say that it's between 3 and 5 years. Can you confirm this? Is it what you think at the IFTH? Well, of course, it can be shorter. But there's the development phase, the prototyping phase, but also the industrialization phase if you want to produce large volumes. So it does take some time to adjust parameters and also to find your spot on the market. I'd just like to pick up on what Jean-Baptiste has said. It's very important to draw inspiration from the needs to develop products for the fashion industry. And we've heard about the cross-fertilization of sports and fashion, and yes, absolutely, these two areas are intertwined. Yes, it's the same. So today there are developments, and well, I'm more in the fashion industry, but today it's seen as the icing on the cake. It's regarded as a cost, and in pure fashion, businesses may agree to add this to have fun with technology, but it's not regarded as a real need. Now, you may also confirm. I've worked at the IFTH as well, but Jean-Baptiste will probably confirm that it's working better in healthcare and in sports because there are some real needs. Some people have real expectations, and so there's a real demand for the market. So thanks to these people, these products will become more widely available. They will probably become cheaper thanks to technological advances. And there might be spillovers into the fashion industry. There's something else I've observed with some of our customers, and it's quite interesting. Very often people want innovation, but they want something that's not on the market, and it's difficult. So people need to understand, buyers need to understand that when you develop a product for them, it's going to take some time. Because I suppose that people like Jean-Baptiste are not always on the lookout for new opportunities. We're not going to do research into something for which there's no demand. So in fashion, it's still very, very difficult. Because, you know, people always say, I'd like this, but it should be available now. Right. We discussed this in a previous panel on the concept of service. And some companies, like Amazon, for example, these companies have made consumers believe that delivery is free, but it's actually service, and it should always be paid for. I mean, everything has a value. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Now, is that clear enough in the mind of the consumer? That's a real question. But, I mean, when you do research, development, application, it all has value. So, of course, I know that it has to be, you have to be competitive, but it does have a cost. Yes, of course, it has to be accessible, but, of course, this value has a price, has a cost, because researchers are working on the solution. So the time spent by researchers does have a cost. Easy Rider. I also would like to come back to what you've just said. For example, we have developed an electronic system. We include electronics in our garments. Where's your company located? Our offices are in Paris, in the Seine-Saint-Denis County, not very far from here, to the north of Paris. So anyway, we've developed this in-house, but also with people from the north of France, with an engineer and an engineering office. Well, people in the north of France are really nice. They do a good job, right? I mean, even people from Savoy, the French mountains, also do a good job. Well, they're normal people, I'd say. Anyway, no, because we're also from Lille, in the north of France, originally. So once we had to switch to the industrial scale, we had to do this in a region where there was the electronic know-how and the textile know-how. Well, this was in Asia. We haven't found any location in Europe where we could do this. And, well, maybe you have ideas, but we could not find an industrial solution where, for example, the jacket would cost 500 euros in production. And the public price is important. So once we started this in Asia, so we started the industrial production, and we spent 2.5 years looking for this. Some people enter the fashion industry, and that's quite smart because they see young creators doing all the job, all the groundwork. And once it can be industrialized, they send buyers who bring prices down, who do a lot of copy paste. They have they have huge networks, and they have the firepower because they have the brand awareness, and they can reduce prices, and we can no longer compete with these firms. So I don't know whether it's happened to you already, but we're facing this. We spend a lot of time developing things that we cannot protect with patents because you just need to change one single aspect. If you change, for example, the yarn, your patent is dead. So it's also very difficult for engineering offices and in terms of research. And today we don't know how to deal with this price-wise, because well, it means that you have to have your products produced in Asia. Well, did you face the same issue? Well, not the same issues because we are an engineering office. We are a design office, and we tried to meet this type of request. But for example, if you look at pure research, which is time-consuming, but I'm sure you can say much more about this than I can, so it can be quite time-consuming, quite costly. Now, There are different design offices like ours, and we are in Lille, actually, in the city of Lille, in the north of France. We are in Tourcoing, which is close to Lille. And our design office actually meets this type of needs. So today we listen to our customers, we talk to them, we listen to their needs, and we work all the way to the pre-production phase. So first we try to understand what type of products you want to develop, whether it's feasible or not. If it's too difficult or too advanced, we will try to do our best with a reasonable budget, and then we try to make progress with you with first prototypes. For example, I work in virtualization, so we first create a virtual version of the product, because we know that at the stage of creation it's not always easy. There's always a gap between what you had in mind and what actually comes out of machines. So we start with a set of virtual specifications that we work on together, and then we make proposals to you, which are then adopted or agreed or approved by your teams. And then depending on your choices, we help you. We help you in the virtual and real-life prototyping all the way to production. So of course we take into account the machines that you will use in productions and the skills available. And do this in Europe, or for example, for the go-live production, where it depends on your production. Irrespective of your type of production, we define the specifications with you. We're not involved in production because this is not our job. We don't have the size for it, or we don't have all the machines for it. But we try to meet our customers' needs, and if necessary, we try to support you. We don't just kick you out once the first prototype has been designed. Right, but the problem for us is after the design phase. We have a product that can be industrialized, that can be mass-produced, but once it's on the market, users can buy this, and well, I may have an answer for you. It doesn't fully answer your question, but in our center, we are soon going to apply for some funds for our R&D activity. But we thought, right, if we start activities that may then give patents, how can we protect them? And how can we make sure that we won't be, our patents will not be copied? Patent infringement or copies are a risk. So we asked an engineer who is specialized in microelectronics patents. And the problem is that this R&D effort is very expensive, very time-consuming. There's one way to go around this. It's to team up with a large company which will have priority in the use of the patent, so you can reach a deal. You can say, okay, we share the exploitation rights of this patent. The advantage of having someone who uses the license is that this company will generate the volumes. You will also have the right to use this innovation. But more importantly, the large company will have the ability to defend the patent. Because having a patent is the right to sue someone, but it's not a protection against copies. So an interesting solution here would be to do co-branding, a co-development. And I think it's still an obstacle today in the fashion industry. Because, for example, to have a 4.0 factory and to create really smart garments, you need a lot of resources. And the problem is that this culture of joint or collaboration is not developed. It's something we're trying to develop in schools and also in a lot of businesses. We're going to meet Jonathan Fisher quite soon and other people. And that's the main idea. It's better to make some efforts together. Right. So we use materials, but we process materials, but we don't pay so much attention to raw materials. What you're saying is quite interesting. That's also the very purpose of trade shows like this one. Networking. I'm a real believer in networking and in the virtuous properties of networks. And I think that collaboration is absolutely essential. And I think that people are more inclined to collaborate today than 15 or 20 years ago. So maybe, as you said, it's a good thing to have a sponsor, a large company, but it's an avenue that should be explored. Yes, well, there have been some developments in the car industry, for example. There have been joint ventures or co-initiatives, for example, in security, for example. Eurocap tests were jointly developed. Yes, but the organization of the car industry is slightly different from that of the fashion industry. But it's fair to say that there are large groups in the textile and fashion industries, and also there are lots of SMEs and intermediate-sized businesses, enterprises, which have collaborated in clusters or in joint research projects. Right, maybe our friends from the audience have questions for Angélique, or do you have any questions, members from the audience? Do you have a question? Ladies, gentlemen? Well, yes, actually, I have to say, you guys have been crystal clear, and you've explored lots of avenues here. Thank you very much, Angélique, Henri Abdillah, Jean-Baptiste, Florent, our friend Gregory, Dr. Yassim. Thank you very much for taking part in this panel discussion. Thank you.